We're back with another episode of Thank You for Your Reply podcast. Today, joining us is Cathy Moulton, president of Thomas Wynn Apartments in Pennsylvania. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Cathy, can you tell us about Thomas Wynn Apartments and also your what you do there and how you got into that? Because you were telling me before that you actually had a totally different career path in mind at first.
That's true. Well, Thomas Wynn Apartments is right outside of Philadelphia on Philadelphia's main line, which is a beautiful wooded suburb of Philly. And it was built in 1952. My grandfather built the apartment community, and my grandmother gave the first hard hat tours to lease up the building. So the property has been in the family now for, oh my gosh, we're coming up on 75 years really soon. I was trained to be a diplomat, working in the Soviet Union and then Russia because the Soviet Union broke up right at the end of my college career. And I was teed up to go work in the embassy in Moscow when my grandfather passed away, leaving my grandmother in her late 70s to run the business by herself. So my father left his job, his career, to learn the apartment business on the fly in his mid 40s. And it was a big moment for me. I realized that my future was taking a different path. And so I declined the offer when it came to work in the embassy and started working part time for the fam on my days off from a retail management job that was just helping me to pay the bills while I was waiting for the State Department. But that management experience came in handy. And ultimately, I got the job as my dad's secretary and started working in the rental office to learn the business from the ground up. And just 2 years ago, I formulated a plan to purchase my brother's interests in the business and to start purchasing my father's interest in the business as well, so that I became the majority shareholder of the business and then the president of the company. And it was not an easy process, but we've all come through it okay. Happy to say that we can all sit together at a holiday meal together again and enjoy each other's company. We've mended all the fences
Worked out for the best.
for the ultimately. There were some bumps.
Okay, I can imagine. So, how big is the apartment? Is it like? Can you call it an apartment complex? Is it or is it a more of? I guess is it a building like a one?
It's a very large building. We have 230 apartments in the, I'm sorry, 218 apartments in the community. We prefer to call it a community because a complex, which
Yeah.
most people call apartments, is something that's hard and difficult. And we've been working very hard on crafting a new culture at Thomas Wynn Apartments to build a community of mutual respect between the team and the residents and our team, vendors, and the whole community with the greater community that surrounds Thomas Wynn. There are a lot of misperceptions about who lives in apartment buildings. And so we've been working on rebuilding trust with the community.
And what's the sort of demographic makeup of the communities? I don't know much. I don't know anything about the town. Like, is there a mix of college students and like retirees or working class or?
We're very heavily dominated by people who are seniors who have moved down from their large apartments in the area. I'm sorry, their large homes in the area. They want to stay in the area that they know and love and have a simpler lifestyle. Certainly, single floor living is important to people who are over the age of 65. And they tend to stay here for many, many years. We have people now who have been with us 40 years. They're rare, but they do stay with us for a long time. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have graduate students who tend to be in their late 20s and a number of young families now, which has been really rewarding for the entire community. And we have a lot of school age children, children younger than school age, and that has just created for a richer, more vibrant community all around.
And a lot of opportunity for sort of surrogate grandparents.
A lot of that. And wonderful trusted babysitters when people need them. It's not like it was when I was growing up. People don't want teenagers to babysit their children anymore. They want somebody older and more mature. So we provide all of those opportunities.
Teenagers can't be trusted anymore with their these things that they have.
That's right. A small
Cell
distraction.
phones. Yeah. I mean, even these our kids here, they if the TV's on or something and can't totally trust them to watch the 2-year-old.
That's fair. That's very fair.
Uh okay, yeah. So moving into our more like the formal questions here, what's your number one source for finding tenants, and how has that changed over the past few years? You said it's been around for 75 years almost.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
there's a lot
Coming
of
up on 75.
technology changes in that time period.
A few,
Yeah.
a few. Everybody didn't have a telephone or a television when the apartments were built here. So it's changed really dramatically. But we get most of our referrals from former residents or existing residents, believe it or not. And that has remained unchanged for over a decade now. I'm really excited to say that our residents have just been a fabulous source of referrals for us because they really enjoy the community and they have a lot of trust in our team. And so they spread the word better than any other advertising source.
Do you have, so you're probably pretty much fully occupied most of the time, or?
We are. We hold at 95% occupancy, and I'm happy to say that our turnover rate is ridiculously low. During the pandemic, we got as low as 11% turnover, which means that only 11% of our units would move out and somebody else would move back in that year. That was during COVID, in the height of COVID. But on average, year over year, our turnover rate holds at 26% when the industry standard is 50%. So can you imagine if you had 200 units in your building and 100 of them had to be moved out, cleaned up,
Oh,
eh, turned over, new bathrooms and kitchens made over and flooring redone in 1 year. That's a lot of units. So there's a great profit margin in increased resident retention. My colleagues, their goal is to get to 40% turnover, and we hold steady at 26.
what do you, so what's what do you attribute that to? Like the people staying that long, or like what do you attribute your low turnover rate to?
I'm so happy that you asked that question. That's really the secret sauce of what we do. We have worked really hard as a team to create a new culture here at Thomas Wynn, something that's unique to apartments, I would say, throughout the country. When I was brought up in the business, we were told that the residents, they sign a lease and that is their contract and it's legally binding and you can hold them to all of the terms of the lease. But I've learned from working in the rental office when I first started working here that life doesn't happen at the beginning or end of your lease. Your mom is not going to get sick at the moment that your lease ends or 90 days before your lease ends so that you can give the leasing office notice that you need to move in with mom for a little bit and take care of her. Your job isn't going to get transferred right at the end of your lease. Things happen that get in the way that we have no control over. And so I made a business decision years ago that we would be much more forgiving of our residents for stuff that happened outside of their control. And we would let them out of their lease with a much smaller fee rather than holding them for it could be 11 months left in your lease. And that tenant's legally responsible for that to pay all of that money. But I thought that didn't seem fair. And so rather than do that, we charge them 90 days, and that gives us enough time to turn over the apartment and make it ready for the next person to move in. If we get somebody to move in sooner, we'll give them the difference back. The minute we start collecting rent on somebody else, then we give the rest of the money back to the former tenant. And by doing things like that, and by helping families when maybe mom was the resident and mom passed away, rather than
Yeah.
hold them until the end of the lease just because mom passed away 2 months into her new lease. We're going to give them that money back. And that has built up such trust, and that word has gotten around that we are human beings and we treat our resident like human beings. It's helped to spread the word that being a family owned company and treating our residents like family has great power. And so it's been a really beautiful thing for us. And our residents prefer to stay with us because we have a better deal than even some of the senior care nursing centers that are around. And I've done that. I've helped people who were in senior care centers. When something happens to them, the contract is the contract and there's no wiggle room. That's a tough spot for most people. So we try to teach people with care and compassion, because the things that happen in somebody's lifetime during their lease, they're pretty big things. Death, divorce, and dire need. And so we're going to address them like human beings.
Yeah, I like that. That makes sense. And a good way of sort of splitting the difference between sticking to the contract and just humanity,
Right.
where you're not putting yourself in this position where you have to making these moral judgments on someone's situation, and then some people get off scot free, and some people have to pay, or so you just have like a policy that makes it fair for everybody. Seems like. Am I getting at that? Am I describing that correctly?
You described it perfectly. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good because I would have a hard time. I'm kind of softy, and I would have a hard time holding a firm line.
Sure.
But also, I wouldn't want to be a doormat either.
Right. Right. I think there's a middle of the road. And with any kind of negotiation, everybody understands a sense of fairness. And so we approached these situations from the standpoint of having a sense of fairness. And it has really resonated with the people that we've worked with.
What is what's one common belief about success that you found to be completely wrong, and then you can apply that to success in general or success in the line of work you're in.
Well, I think that it's a great question for this line of work, because the American view of success, and certainly the landlord's view of success, is that, maximizing your profit is the most important thing. And maybe it's because I've traveled a little bit, but I don't think that monetary success is the ultimate win. I mean, we all want to be comfortable, don't get me wrong, but I've sat around a table with other landlords who have wealth beyond imagination, for most people. And they're talking about, you know, cutting employees to maximize their bottom line further, or, holding somebody to the very end of their lease because, that's a $20,000 gain for them. And I just have to shake my head and ask, how many millions are enough? And at the end of the day, I like to be able to put my head on the pillow and fall asleep knowing that I did a good turn for somebody. I can't look a little old lady in the eye who is living on her Social Security, and the rents, they keep going up. If I can't strike a balance to keep her in her apartment home, and maybe not make the extra, I don't know, $15-$30 a month, uh, but she gets to stay in her home, I sleep at night. And I feel pretty good that I did somebody a good turn. And she's incredibly loyal to us. That's a beautiful thing. And all of her neighbors are loyal because they've heard her story, and her family's loyal because they know her story. I think, to me, having a clean conscience and a comfortable lifestyle is pretty wonderful. But I don't know that another zero on my ledger is going to make me feel better.
Yeah, it's not gonna make you sleep more comfortably. You could buy like some nicer sheets, maybe, but but still. Um, I still want, on a tangent. I'm not sure I believe the whole thread count thing because I've tried some like high thread count sheets that were not much more comfortable than more normal ones, but
It's all a scam.
yeah, I guess it depends on what thread they're using.
That's right. How many zeros do you need on your thread count?
Yeah. How do you structure your typical workday to maximize productivity and maintain a work-life balance? Because I'm sure with 218 units, it gets to be busy.
We're pretty busy. I like to start my day by coming in before anybody else does. And I have my cup of tea or coffee, and I sit down with my calendar and a list, and I work out the priorities for the day. I try to look ahead and anticipate what's coming, and I make sure that I'm clearly writing down these are the 3 to 5 things that I have to get done today, to feel like I can leave the office, go enjoy my family, and the rest we'll get to if we can. I certainly hope so, but you can't imagine what comes up in an apartment community. With we have over 500 people, so there's a lot that can happen outside of our control. So that's the first part of my focus time to address the work-life balance situation. I keep a color-coded calendar. There's a color for business, a color for my personal needs, the things that I want to do. I have a color for celebrating people's birthdays and anniversaries, making sure I get cards out or getting a gift for somebody or taking them out to lunch or dinner. I have a color for philanthropy, doing good work outside of the business to make sure that I'm helping the community at large. And so long as I can see that those colors are somewhat in balance, maybe not for this week might be really heavy on work, and maybe the following week is really heavy on philanthropy. But in the course of a month, hopefully those colors are looking pretty much in balance. Then I feel like I'm hitting that work life balance or juggle. I prefer to call it a juggle, that I'm doing a better job at the juggling act.
Yeah. Juggling or plate spinning too.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, so how big, what's the population of the town?
Of our town, that's a good question. We probably have, I don't know, 10,000 people in the town of Wynwood. We're a hustling, bustling suburban area. We're literally right over the line of West Philadelphia. We have a number of colleges in our area, and it's pretty busy. But having this little 10-acre wooded jewel of a location, situated in between some shopping areas and restaurants, it's pretty bucolic. There's a ballpark across the street, so a lot of our residents will eat dinner and in the springtime and walk across the street and catch a baseball game uh, from the community. It's like Main Street America here.
And is it a lot of, I guess you said there's a lot of senior tenants there, but is there also people that are, is it commutable into Pennsylvania and, or sorry, into Philadelphia?
Totally. We're located right at the Wynwood train station, and it's a 15-minute ride into Center City by train. But it's to downtown Philly, it's probably 25 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on the traffic or the time that you go. But very easy to get in and out of downtown Philadelphia from here. All the ball games, they're pretty easy to get to.
So is that a lot of, is there a lot of people that live in the town that do that, that are commuting, that work in Philly? And
Very definitely. They get off the train at night and just walk on the path to the building. It's pretty convenient. They don't even need to move their car. So it helps their insurance rates too, because their car is not getting a lot of
oh yeah,
action,
yeah, uh, I like being able to take public transportation when I can.
for sure.
But so that's the difficulty in the United States, though, is that there's not a lot of places you can live where that is really doable for a lot of people.
Very true.
Can you share a major mistake that you made early on when you started there, even from when you were working, as your father's secretary, and then what you've learned from it?
I can. We were developing the neighboring property to be another apartment community, and we were going into a uh, locally mandated facilitation process with 9 stakeholder groups. And I was young in my career then, and a problem solver. That was sort of my job here, just solving problems. And I was so accustomed to solving problems that I went into the first facilitation meeting so eager to get to the solution that in the first discussions with a small group that we were broken into, I started offering that I felt that a lot of our goals were aligned with the stakeholders' goals. And I thought my father and our attorneys were going to kill me on the spot because I didn't understand that this was going to be a long, drawn out process and that listening to each other was going to be a major function of that process. I was so ready to get to solutions. And that's not how really big, important negotiations work. Not even small negotiations. We have to do a better job of listening to each other. And I actually started this discussion talking about listening to our prospects for their needs. That's because I've matured since this original facilitation work. I didn't know at the time it was going to be an 18-month long facilitation with these 9 stakeholder groups that would include many, many meetings running late into the night with the township that were going to be open forums for all of the neighbors to attend. It was a very long process. And I've learned from that mistake that solutions are important, but we really have to listen to understand first and make that a critical life skill.
So it's the same kind of thing where people talking about a lot these days on social media, where it's like if you're listening to your partner telling about some problem they had at work and you immediately try to solve the problem for them. No, you're supposed to pause and you ask them, would you like me to listen or are you looking for a solution?
Right, right. Or ask clarifying questions.
Yeah,
What did you mean when you said, I was not good at that? I'm still learning. I think we're all a work in progress, but
yeah.
at least now I know that I have to work on that. But back then I didn't.
How do you maintain relationships with people that are servicing the building and like contractors that have to repair things, as time goes on, especially with
Uh,
an older building?
Probably the best way that we maintain our relationships with our vendors, and I'll include realtors in that, is by paying them promptly. When they submit an invoice, we're paying them that week or the following week, depending on which day they give us their invoice, because we do one day is payday. And that has done really well to build trust with our vendors. They're partners of ours. We feel that way about them, and I think they feel that way about us. We've had things go wrong where a pipe will crack, a plumbing pipe, and you know what happens when a plumbing pipe cracks. There's a big mess that follows that. But because we pay our plumbers and our drain cleaners, when we call them, they usually come running, and that's wonderful. Their other clients are paying them 30 days out, 60 days out, 90 days sometimes, and we don't play those games. We just feel that's very important. And for that reason, we've had a lot of our vendors for decades, just like we have many of our residents for decades.
That's a common. I've asked that question to a few other people, and it's the same kind of answer. Pay them on
Good.
time.
The golden
Oh,
rule, right?
yeah,
Treat other people the way you want to be treated.
yeah. What is one tool or system that you use that you couldn't live without, and why?
To say there's this little known brand called Satisfax. It's online, and they are a survey generator that is tied in with our property management software. And when we complete a work order or when a new resident moves in, or even before their lease renewal is due to go out, this Satisfax system pulls that data and sends that resident a survey. You just had a work order done. How was the service? And they do a quick, like 1 to 5 rating, and then they invite them to write a review. That has generated so much positive attention for us. It's increased our reviews online. It's improved our scores. We are head and shoulders above all of the other apartments in our community. We've been in the top 100 communities nationwide. We've been in the top 10 property management companies for a company our size, and we've been in the top 1% of all apartment communities nationwide for several years now because of this Satisfax review generator. So I've been really happy with them, and it's done great to help spread the good news about how we do business a little bit differently.
And what software do you use for the property management?
RealPage. RealPage has been excellent for us, even though we're a smaller company. They are very intuitive. Everything clicks through in a very logical way. I would say no property management software system is perfect, but this is pretty good. It's the best I've seen. And everything flows really nicely from the front office leasing side to back of house account side. Our controllers happy with it, just like our leasing professionals are happy with it. So it's great, great service.
The only other one I've heard of, because I'm not good dealing with property management tools all that much, but it was Hemlane.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Anyway, how do you handle difficult market conditions? Like for instance, right now with inflation and rents going up, food prices going up,
Sure.
and how do you handle that with your tenants, existing and prospective ones?
We try to be really proactive. The leadership team is always watching the news and trying to keep our ear to the ground first to anticipate what's coming. So before COVID, we started thinking about how we could proactively make the building cleaner for all of our residents. We didn't anticipate that the building would be on lockdown like the rest of the world. But for right now, how do we address it with our tenants? There's a lot of fear, especially when half of our community, more than half, is their senior citizens who rely in some part on Social Security. Some of them are completely dependent on that Social Security check. So the threat or the perceived threat that Medicare something may happen and Social Security something may happen, even if it means that their checks are slow to arrive, we're actively talking with our residents. We're letting them know that our leadership team is talking about this. We've gone through the whole list of all of our residents to determine who is probably going to be affected by these upcoming changes so that we can speak to them directly and reassure them that we don't know exactly what the plan is yet because it's more of a perceived threat, but we're engaged and we're going to do something to meet them to the best of our ability where they are. When it came to COVID, money was tight. People weren't sure if they were going to keep their jobs in a remote environment because that was a whole new thing. So, the calendar, those pages kept turning and people's rents, they were increasing at their renewal like they always do.
Oh yeah.
But what we did in that case was we included a new paragraph in the renewal letter that just said, we know times are tough and we know it's uncertain right now. So your rent is going to increase from this to this, and that's supposed to happen on April 1st. But this year, we're going to give you a 90-day grace period. And for April, May, and June, you can keep paying the old rent, and the new rent won't hit until July 1st. There's 90 days of a small increase that we lost from every one of our tenants. It didn't impact our bottom line. It built up a ton of goodwill. They were incredibly grateful for that small thing, but the perception was that we cared. And so they stayed in their apartments. They helped to keep the building clean. They stayed inside when they were sick. We were delivering mail to them. We were picking up their trash from their door just to help them get through those rocky days of being locked in their apartment if they were sick. But the perception was that we were doing something that nobody else was doing. And I've not heard of another landlord who said, we're not going to increase your rent for an extra 90 days.
Yeah, I heard way more stories to the opposite of that during COVID.
Right. Right.
Out of
Exactly.
not being able to work, not being able to paycheck, and like, well, nope, you got to pay us anyway, or you're out.
Right. And don't get me wrong, we have bank obligations too. And my brothers and my dad, they're still shareholders in the company, but in a minority share now. So I have obligations to meet, but I'm really watching that bottom line and looking at all of the levers to see what it is that I can control and where I can give comfort to others. And that's how we deal with it.
So what's was our last question before I let you go. What's one skill you think most people overlook, but is crucial for long-term success?
I'm going to say compassion. I think compassion is a skill that we often overlook in the housing industry. I think you've probably noticed I'm a big nerd. Um, I I learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in high school, like everybody else did, and that your shelter is the number one need over food and water, because you can have food and water, but be exposed to the elements and die anyway if you don't have shelter. And so, if housing is your number one need, then why are we treating everybody like robots? And why are we holding them to ridiculous standards and charging them fees when they can't afford the rent anyway? Let's add some compassion to the equation and see where we can help people.
That's a good one for everybody to remember, and I think it's so rare in business in general. And I think I get it. And I think a lot of like some businesses or business owners, it's harder to maybe use that or do that, but there's always some way. I would think if you think hard enough about it, if you try hard enough to be compassionate.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Cathy. I really appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure. Really, thank you so much for inviting me to be your guest.
As well.